Hello and welcome to my channel. In this one we're going to do a colored pencil drawing of a dramatic sunset with a gathering of stormy clouds. Let's start. This is another drawing that I'm going to do on a UART sanded paper, which is normally used with pastels, but I prefer colored pencils most of the time, so I'm first going to do a series of drawings in colored pencil. The first one was a drawing of an animal, and now we're doing a landscape. The size of the paper is a little bit smaller this time, as you can see, but if you're wondering about the grit or the grade of the paper, it's an 800 grit UART sanded paper. Now, as for the pencils, as usual, I'm going to use Faber Castell Polychromos colored pencils. Now you can see that I'm doing a little bit of blending with a brush. Last time I tried this, I wasn't really happy with how the brushes performed, but I realized that when I use a harder brush, like a harder bristle brush, with a cropped tip, like a shorter brush, it tends to work a little bit better when blending. It pushes that material around a little bit better and pushes it into the grain of the paper, while when I was using some other brushes or longer brushes, I wasn't really getting that effect. So that was something I discovered, and it seems to be working a little bit better, but it's not enough to smooth things out, to reduce the texture or to remove the texture entirely. Anyway, let me get back to talking about the drawing itself. So we're going to have a lot of clouds in the upper part of the drawing, and the drawing is sort of going to be divided into, let's say, two parts, with the 2/3 of the paper being the sky and the lower third being the ground. And of course the horizon will be about 1/3 of the height of the paper. As for the colors of the sky, we're going to have some bluish, purplish, violet, and some orange and reddish tones. So we're going to have all kinds of colors here. I'm going to put the reference in the description as a sort of a reference, but mine is obviously going to be a lot different. First because I wanted to change some things, and also because I couldn't really replicate everything I saw in terms of colors, because this paper in combination with colored pencils sort of has a will of its own, and you just gotta go with the flow. Anyway, as you can see, I'm layering multiple colors here. Some parts of those clouds are a little bit darker and cooler, others are a little bit lighter and more and warmer, more orangey and reddish. Now the upper part in particular appears to be more bluish, so I added some more of this sky blue, and I just enough to create a thin layer, and then I blended that with a brush. Once again, a short brush, a cropped brush, and especially a stiffer, harder bristle brush seems to work a little bit better when pushing this material into the grain of the paper. And you can see that it blends okay as long as the target color is not much different than the background color of the paper in terms of value. When we start using some darker colors, that's when you start getting more texture and more of these lighter spaces in between. Now you can partly overcome them by using a brush, but that's usually not enough, because some of that texture of the paper, that grain of the paper, still remains visible. So in order to smooth that out, I further tried using Tortillions, as you can see, but Tortillions are usually better for creating these smaller blurry shapes. But the best way to blend and to soften is by using a lighter pencil like I'm doing here. So I used this light pinkish color, the salmon, and used it on top of some darker colors. And that makes things a little bit lighter, but it also blends very thoroughly, and it removes a lot of that texture. So blending by layering lighter pencils on top of the darker ones is not that uncommon. You would do that on regular paper when layering as well, but here it is especially a useful tool. So when building up your colors and values, you need to take that into account, that you will be using a lighter color on top, and that it will be getting a little bit lighter in the process, which obviously is kind of tricky because I'm not really an expert on colors and color drawings. Most of the work that I've done was in black and white, but I do like to do color pencil drawings every now and then. I sort of hope that here with this dramatic sky I'll be able to come up with some interesting colors and nice looking shapes for the clouds. The clouds are a little bit tricky, they're all over the place, and some very unusual shapes. So what the scene is supposed to represent is like a sort of a sunset with a gathering of stormy clouds in the distance. And you can see that this part of the scene to the right appears to be a little bit darker and a bit more purplish and bluish, and then a little bit more violet, and then at the bottom here we have some warmer colors again, because some of the edges of those clouds are catching probably some of that warm glow from the setting sun. Once I've done most of the right side of the top part of the scene, I moved on to put some finishing touches here in the middle using a lighter pencil. This is an ivory colored pencil, and the way I'm using it is to create some highlights on the clouds, on the edges of the clouds, which are catching that light. So those are the lightest bits, and the ivory colored pencil is kind of how should I put it, almost white but kind of yellowish, but here when you layer it on top of other colors you can get a color that's similar to the color underneath. It just it's a little bit lighter, so that's sort of what I'm trying to achieve. But for blending and muddying those colors, removing the texture, I mostly used some lighter pinkish colors like the cinnamon, the light beige, and the salmon. Anyway, at this point I sort of felt that I needed to at least sketch out the shape of the mountains in the distance, the mountains on the horizon, because I needed to know where the ground begins and where the sky ends, and how much more room I have for those lower clouds in the lower part of the scene near the horizon. And here the sky actually becomes lighter and a bit more yellowish, which is why I'm not going to cover it much with pencils, and I'm going to try to use that background color of the paper, because the background color of my paper, this lighter UART paper, is kind of light yellowish color, or sand color, whatever it is. So I'm going to try to use that, and I added a few touches of bluish and reddish color here and there, but I'm mostly going to leave it like that because I think this lighter yellowish color is now working for me, so I'm going to just try to use it. There are situations in which you have to try to overcome the background color and saturate the paper by layering lots of different colors on top, but there are situations in which you can actually use the background color of the paper to your advantage, and that way you can minimize both the use of pencil and the amount of time you need to spend working on that background color. There are some more clouds here stretching out from the right to the middle part of the scene, and I'm softening those with a brush and then adding in some reddish details here and there before I work on top of that with a lighter pencil to muddy the colors and blend everything to make it a bit softer and to remove a lot of that texture. I also tried putting in a little bit of gray because I felt like I saw some grayish tones as well, but then I realized that I sort of prefer bluish colors or violet colors. Here and there I went in with a light gray, light cool gray to create some lighter areas in between those clouds to maybe modify their shape a little bit, to show like maybe some of the sky is visible through them. And then after that I finally moved on to these lower hanging clouds, these clouds which are closer to the horizon, which are obviously further away. And I started with this violet color, and then started drawing some larger shapes, and then adding in some occasional scattered smaller shapes, like we have a bunch of smaller clouds, and then some of them are gathering into a larger mass of clouds. I softened that with a brush as well. It's a good idea to use a couple of different brushes so that you wouldn't muddy colors that are completely different. And then I did a bit of softening with a lighter pencil. Then I added some more darker bluish color at the top, and then more blending. So you can see that I'm mostly going back and forth between blending and layering with a pencil. And here I decided to make some parts of the background even lighter, like maybe the light of the sun is breaking through here. And I added a little bit more of that lighter ivory colored pencil here and there. And then I use my tortilla not so much to blend, but to draw some of these smaller blurry shapes, like those scattered clouds, light wispy clouds here and there, and maybe to modify the edges of those clouds a little bit. As you can see, there is still a little bit of texture here and there. It's not as smooth as if I used pastel pencil or soft pastel. And obviously pastels would be much faster than this, but I have to tell you, this didn't really take that long. It was a little bit complicated, but overall I think it went a little bit faster than I expected. Now if I were working on a larger piece, that would obviously take more time, and it would be a little bit more frustrating, but for these miniatures I think colored pencils work pretty well. Now onto these mountains in the distance. I started with some bluish colors, experimented with a couple of different blues and maybe some purple colors. So this is the color that I sort of came up with. I will probably be adding some more colors to that. I softened it a little bit with a lighter bluish color, and then I added these lighter details with a light cool gray, like maybe some of these tops of mountains have a little bit of snow on them, just like in the reference, I suppose. So a few of these touches of lighter color, but I felt like the light cool gray wasn't enough, so I added a touch of white colored pencil, because when I layer it on top of these other colors, it doesn't look completely white, and it also depends on how you apply it and whether it's sharp or dull. So I used a dull pencil and I just dragged it on top of these layers to make some portions of those mountain tops a little bit lighter, and I think it sort of looks like snow-covered mountain tops. Anyway, at the top here I didn't really like this portion between those two groups of clouds, so I decided to connect them a little bit with a little bit of dark pencil first, and then a little bit of lighter violet, and then blending that together. So I thought that maybe when I connect these two groups or masses of clouds at the top, it looks a little bit better. And after that I did a little bit more work on the lower part of the background, adding in some darker tones as well as some other colors, like a touch of violet and some bluish color, just to make the grass not green but reflect the colors of the environment a little bit better. After that I started working on the trees. We're going to have some of these distant trees and woods on the horizon, but I first experimented with a couple of different pencils, and then I decided, you know what, I'm just going to go with a black colored pencil, and I'm going to draw these darker shapes with a black colored pencil first, and later if I need to I can modify their colors by layering some other tone some of the hues on top and maybe making them lighter as needed or where needed, because at the bottom of the mountains I also want to have a little bit of that foggy effect. Now the trees, mostly coniferous trees, just tapering shapes of varying sizes. I want some of them to look like they're a little bit further away than others. Those on the right are a little bit closer to us, and the drawing, as you can see, is almost done. If you want to see longer videos and more content, as always, you should check out my Patreon, because you'll find hundreds of full-length and narrated videos there. So there's my signature. The drawing is done. Don't forget to check out my other videos, and thanks for watching. Bye bye.